Let's do a quick quiz. What do these three characters all have in common? If you guess that they're all unbearably sexy, you'd be right. But more importantly, depending on who you ask, all these characters have a block. They all come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but they have a couple of key features that they all share. For starters, blocks do not completely mitigate or delete damage and abilities, they only mitigate damage taken. This means that you can still be CC'd or affected by other projectiles when blocking. While these characters are blocking, they have reduced movement and cannot perform any other actions other than canceling the block. And for some characters, you can quickly re-enable the block once you've canceled it. And of course, blocks only reduce damage from the front in one direction, so there is always a weak point that you can exploit. You play Overwatch, you knew all of that, so what are we actually doing here? Every tank in Overwatch has damage reduction or mitigation or something of that nature, yet blocks feel uniquely frustrating. Why is that? Well, come on, I'm gonna come show you. That's why we're here, that's what we're doing. You know, like, all right, come on. Let's talk about the low-hanging fruit when it comes to why blocks are so frustrating. They're just too fun to shoot. Unlike shields or bubble or matrix, shooting a block feels exactly like you're shooting someone as normal. It tricks your brain into thinking that what you're doing has the exact same amount of impact as if they weren't mitigating the damage, so you're much more inclined to shoot them. And I think that's kind of what they were going for when they made these abilities. Unlike most of the tanks in Overwatch who many times you're supposed to ignore, I think that these characters with blocks are designed to be shot, designed to take your attention away undeservingly. Here, take a character like Winston and of course his bubble. When he dives your backline, you do have a couple of options. Turn and try and break the bubble, go inside the bubble and try and shoot him directly, or just go focus on a backliner or someone who isn't actively using the bubble. What Winston does is introduce a new obstacle into the field that has adverse effects on the enemy, like blocking LOS of teammates and enemies. Sure, there are times where you should break the bubble, but more often than not, you need to find an alternative solution. Reposition around the bubble, knock him out of his safe space, maybe even anticipate where he's going to go after the bubble and shoot him there. There's a lot of decisions to make. Where, when, and how Winston puts his ability down is really going to determine what you do. But now consider that same example with Hazard jumping your backline instead. You have a lot more limited options. Are you going to shoot him or ignore him? The problem here is that when you ignore Winston, he lacks a lot of the kill threat by himself, so his goal is trying to put as much pressure on your team to draw that attention back to him. But when you ignore Hazard, he just goes on a killing spree. So to stop that, of course, you shoot him, but his super survivability with block prevents him from actually dying, and it still allows his team to push up. Leaving Hazard or Ram unchecked is not a solution, so you kind of get stuck having to deal with them, and when you're shooting their blocks, it's pretty unfun. It feels like you should be getting more done than what you're actually doing, and often you fall into this trap of like, oh, I'm just there, I'm right there, I'm about to kill him, don't worry guys, and you kind of never do. Obviously, it's okay for tanks to have kill threat, but the reign that Hazard and Ramatra have over the battlefield because of their blocks is just kind of a nightmare to deal with. But what about their big weakness with block? Shooting them from behind. I mean, that's how you deal with someone who runs past you. You surround them. But like, can you actually surround them effectively? Ignoring Ram's shield and Hazard's wall, which just kind of exacerbate this problem, their blocks are too effective at mitigating damage. Think of every character having a center that has a coordinate that determines their position on the map. Damage can come in from all sides, 360 degrees around them, right? Now your character always faces one direction perpendicular to the y-axis, directly in front of their character model. Blocks are coded to reduce damage in a cone shape with a certain angle centered on the direction the character is facing. The problem here is that the size of those cones is far too large. Ramatra's and Doom's are about 106 degrees in total, and Hazard's is a whopping 180. That means if you are standing directly to the side of Hazard, you are not getting full damage on him. You are still getting reduced damage. This allows these characters to get to your backline and not really have to worry about getting surrounded. Just make sure there's a little bit of cover behind you and you're probably good to go. For Hazard in particular, it's really easy for him to leap to an angle and then just chill with block up because his cone is so large. Basically, even if you do try to counterplay a block by getting behind the blocker, it's way harder for you to execute and way easier for them to deal with you. Speaking on execution, we gotta talk about mechanics. There are none. Like at all. For blocks. But that's not inherently a problem. There's plenty of characters that have abilities that aren't necessarily the most skillful in a vacuum. Blocks, for instance, are supposed to be about timing, resource management, and opportunity cost. Should I hold my block to live, or should I try to greed a kill here? Maybe I should not block some of the damage early so my supports can get faster ults and potentially get them before the fight starts. But here's the thing. Ramattra and Hazard do not have enough downsides to make the decision making interesting. Hazard at least has some reload / damage potential and an actual resource to manage, but with how fast it comes back and the minor perk allowing him to stack it, it really doesn't come into play very much. Seriously, why does the extra resource from his perk get used up second? You can basically hold it indefinitely and never ever have to worry about it because you'll just kind of always have it. And of course, Ramattra can block, then unblock at will during Nemesis, and if you block and cancel into a punch and block right after that, it's almost like he never even put his dukes down. Sure, Ramattra technically loses an ability when he goes into his alternate mode, but it's really easy to get it set up for when he goes into Nemesis, and it's basically like you aren't down any resources at all. And to boot, both of these characters have very little drawbacks to starting and stopping blocking, so it's really easy to get right back into that insane damage pressure that they both have. The decision making and weaknesses are there to a small extent, but there really aren't enough trade-offs for how easy blocking is to execute. Before we move on here, we do kind of need to talk about Doom, because he doesn't really fall into my grievances. Listen, Doom definitely has other problems, but his block is really not that much of an issue. It's an example of something that I like to call indirect survivability. Basically, it's the idea that a character doesn't have to have too much health or mitigation because there is a downside to shooting them. Zarya is the classic example here. It only takes about 200 HP to burn through a bubble, but doing so makes her a super scary kill threat. However, if you don't shoot her, that allows her and her team to set up really effectively. Either way, depending on what you do, Zarya benefits, and she doesn't even have to take that much damage to begin with. Going back to Doom, I don't think shooting block feeling good is a problem, because when you do shoot it, you immediately go, uh-oh, I shouldn't have shot that. But even if you do give him punch, he'll still have less health for his engage. He might actually have to use that punch and not get much out of it anyway. So Doom actually has varying levels of pressure depending on what the enemy tries to do, unlike Haz or Ramattra. Not to mention that Doom also has a much more committal block because it's on a full cooldown. He can still cancel it at any time, sure, but if he uses it at the wrong time, it is much more of a waste compared to those other characters. The big problem with Doom block is that when the devil himself possesses him and he can eat projectiles that are like 7 feet above his head. Yeah, Doom's power matrix kind of throws those interesting dynamics like right out the window. It's gigantic, it lasts way too long, it gives Doom an easier time to build the punch, so it's almost like you can't even react to it at that point. It's free value without adding any interesting downsides or decision making, and it makes fighting Doom a lot more frustrating. I hate this perk, man. Oh my god. Okay, we know what the issues are. Now it's the part of the video where I'm gonna pitch solutions to fix this unique ability type. But are blocks really that unique? What if I was hiding something from you? What if I wasn't telling you the full truth when I set this up? What if I told you that Overwatch has effectively had blocks in the game since it launched in 2016? Oh, you don't believe me? Well, let's take a look at some of my good friends. Rhine, D.Va, and Sigma. Each of these characters have direction-sensitive mitigation abilities that can be cancelled at will. Rhine pulls out a shield that blocks damage from the front for himself and his allies. D.Va creates a matrix that deletes projectiles that are within its radius, and Sigma has both projected barrier, and kinetic grasp that do the same kind of functions as both the former and the latter. While all of these are unique from each other and don't share all the qualities of the blocks that I was talking about earlier, they're certainly close enough and effectively work the same way. They are really self-survivability tools that are centered around the front of the character. But the real question is, if these are actually effectively blocks, why is no one nearly as annoyed with these characters as they are with the new ones? Well, a big thing I think is that shooting them feels really bad. Not only are the visuals and sound effects less pronounced, some of these completely remove both of those entirely. It doesn't actually feel like you're doing anything, so you're a lot less inclined to keep shooting them. You want to find value somewhere else. Of course, with shields, there are going to be certain times where the right play is to shoot them, so a little bit of feedback is generally okay. But the reason that's so acceptable is because all of these abilities do something else. Remember back to that Winston example where I talked about how Bubble changes the environment of the game? All of these abilities do something similar to that. Rhine and Sig Shield work just like Bubble. They introduce an element that disrupts game plans and forces you to change what you're doing. DM and Grasp can both be used defensively and for your teammates, so now all of a sudden non-tank players getting shot can force the tank out of their position and allow you to take advantage of it. Even though these are all primarily selfish abilities with limited range, the fact that they have multiple applications allows there to be multiple solutions to deal with them. These characters can't do everything at once and are constantly trying to figure out when the best time is to attack or check an angle or peel or anything on this long list of things a tank is supposed to do. The actual blocks in these games do not have these applications, and that bottlenecks the ability of the attacker to try to deal with them. Another problem with the blocks is that there aren't significant downsides to their use or their cancellation, so there is not interesting decision making nearly as much as these other abilities. The shields are very large and have a health bar, and there also isn't enough time to regen them in between times that you would want to use it. Basically, they can't be up at all times. Grasp has a very long cooldown, and using it at the wrong time hurts not only Sig's survivability then, but also in the future. DM is quite narrow, with a pretty significant stopping and starting time in between. And of course, some of those downsides that I mentioned specifically apply to some of those others as well. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you cannot throw these abilities out willy-nilly. You actively have to manage a resource, which is more than I can say for Ramatra and really even Hazard. I'm not going to sit here and say that all of those abilities are perfect. Sigma has had his time to be the most broken character in the game. DM is one of the most frustrating abilities and also is really close to being broken at all times. And even Rhine Shield can be a little frustrating to deal with when you aren't in a group or scrim environment. There is actually something to manage, and it makes playing those characters really interesting and fighting against them a lot more fair. So I want to go through these three problem children right here and apply the lessons we've learned to get them back on the right path. I'm going to start with Doom here because, as we talked about before, his block really isn't that bad. For starters, we got to lower the amount of time Power Matrix is up at least by half, if not more. I want it to feel like you're actually performing a parry and reading your opponent properly. I think we also need to take a page out of Sigma's book here and not allow Doom to have Empowered Punch if his block is cancelled when he already has it. This will, 1, prevent Doom from getting Empowered Punch if his block is cancelled with the ability that would make him get the punch in the first place, and 2, would make it so that Doom can't hold his block too long because he might risk losing that punch that he already built. These are just little changes, but I think you're going to be able to feel that improvement a lot. Alright, next up we have got Hazard. Spike Guard does have some cool things going for it with the extra damage and the potential to reload his gun, but I think we can do better. For starters, let's shrink that block angle way down, at least in line with the other blockers. Not only does Hazard already have wall, which he'll need to use more defensively now, he's also going to be more inclined to take the lifesteal perk because he might need it more often because he'll take more damage. That's a quick fix, but let's go to work on Hazard's resource now. Storing charge with that perk has gotta go. That bar needs to go in front of his actual meter. This forces Hazard to think about when he actually does or doesn't have that extra block resource, when he's going to use it, and he's actively thinking about it when he throws the wall down. Now, Hazard is a really fluid character, and I think if you touch the time between blocking and unblocking, it's gonna feel pretty bad. So I wanna make it so that Hazard has his resources drained if he's taking damage during the block. It'll only take a small percentage of resource relative to the damage that Hazard takes, but it will encourage Hazard to use his block for its other purposes more often, because that's when he's going to get the most value out of that resource. Sitting there taking damage while you're blocking is going to be not nearly as effective. I think I'd be down for if every single instance of damage took the same amount of his resource away, so he's still incentivized to hit those big moments and not the trash damage that's going to be thrown his way. This might create some problems with the faster shooters in the roster, but that could just be an interesting design decision. I don't know. And finally, to wrap this all up, since Hazard can use his block for more other purposes rather than negating damage, let's give him something else to do. My idea here is that holding block in front of an ally will give them a little bit of health and a little bit of overhealth that will tick down the second he stops guarding them. This not only gives Hazard another use specifically for his allies, but it might allow him to stop tunnel visioning the backline in the middle of fights. Instead of always having to jump to do damage every single time, he might want to jump to save a teammate instead. That will get him off your backline in a different way. He's also a pretty mobile character, so I don't think it's a bad fit for him to be hopping between both the enemy and his team. Plus, you have some new dynamics as well. You could use all of your block pre-fight to give Tracer some overhealth and let her lead the charge and you be the secondary with a lot less survivability. There are definitely a couple of effects you could add to Spike Guard to do relatively the same thing, but I feel like this one is the most straightforward. Finally, we have Ramatra. First off, no more blocking forever during the duration of Nemesis form, but let's make it a little interesting. Ram doesn't have a resource or a separate block health bar, so I think giving him something akin to the posture meter in Sekiro could be the way to fix this. Basically, when Ram takes damage while blocking, his posture meter will build. While he is blocking, that posture meter cannot fall at all. He has to put his hands down in order for it to decline. If Ramatra fills his meter, he is going to lose control of his character, play a break animation that might last about a second, and automatically be forced into his Omnic mode. This actually punishes Ramatra if he holds his block too long. He has to figure out a way not to take too much damage, or else he'll either die or lose his Nemesis mode even earlier than he was supposed to. And don't forget, this will count during his ult, so it is really, really good against it in particular. I would also say that we have to make sure that when Ram breaks his stance, he has a longer cooldown to get back into Nemesis. You don't want him popping Nemesis, breaking instantly, and then 8 seconds later, getting right back into it. I think the easy thing to do here is to take the max amount of time you're allowed to be in Nemesis mode, add it to the cooldown of Nemesis mode, and then subtract however long he was in Nemesis before he broke. That will give you your new cooldown. So that's the big thing, but just like Hazard, I want to introduce a little bit of utility to it so that he's encouraged to use block in other ways. So what I've come up with is, what if when you held the block for a second or two and then released it, you got a short burst of speed, faster than Nemesis mode would typically provide. Him and his allies in a very small radius would also get these effects. Basically, since Ram is so large, my idea here is basically he's able to use this to jump in front of his teammates to tank damage for them, and then give them a speed boost to try to get out of that situation, or press the advantage. What you could do with this is waste some of those precious seconds in Nemesis mode to give your teammates a crazy speed boost to start engages. I think this works well with that posture meter because it gives him a means of escape if his posture is high and his health is low, but also there's some risk versus reward because he might break while he's trying to build up a speed boost. This actually gives Ramatra high risk to his high reward options and gives him a lot more to think about when he's in Nemesis mode. I am a little concerned about how good this is going to be applied to his ult, but you can always nerf the duration or the damage or anything like that if it's way too much. By no means do I think that these solutions are perfect. They're all hypothetical and untested, but I think this is a good direction to bring these characters in. It feels like they can kind of just do anything because they can. Their game plans remain too unfazed in their current state. I want to hear your guys' ideas and critiques about these things because I am not the authority on this and I am always open to suggestions. Well, lads, we did it. We have finally solved the most annoying tank abilities in the game. Pat on the back. Now, I think it's time for a little bit of rest and relaxation while we wait for Blizzard to fix what's going on. Hi. Hey there. What's up? Oh god. Oh god. Oh god. Okay, lightning round here. We gotta do Orisa Fortify because it's like a block, although it's 10 times worse. At the push of a button, you get complete CC immunity, plus overhealth, plus damage reduction from all sides, plus no more headshots, plus you are fully actionable during the entire thing. What? Other than it being cooldown based, this ability has basically no weaknesses outside of extremely niche situations. I'm not going to turn Fortify into a block because we have plenty of those already, but I am going to use what I've learned to see if I can adapt it for this ability. Part of why Orisa Fortify is so good is because Ori keeps her insane lethality while she's using it. So I think it would be interesting to make her choose between survivability and lethality on the fly. One way to do that I can think of is to scale her damage reduction with her overheat resource. The lower her overheat, the more damage she can reduce, and vice versa. This will make it so that Ori is constantly trying to figure out if she should greed for more damage or to hunker down and play it safe. Now that there's a tell, Orisa going on the offensive, you as the enemy have a way to punish her during Fortify. This also enables a legit reason to use Spear Spin during Fortify because it enables her to go aggressive early and gives her a safety net. Overall, her potential free limbs and damage is greatly reduced, but it still allows her to make plays like she could. She just has to think about it a lot more. I do think Fortify could benefit from a complete overhaul or an outright replacement, but I don't work on the video game, so this will do for now. Unless, there's somebody watching this at some company that maybe works on Overwatch that, is looking for a young, spunky computer science and film studies major who could give them a unique perspective on the video game. Hi, my name is... So overall, at the end of this thing, what is my big idea here? Well, I think it's easy to get blindsided by the hate that we have for some of these characters and their abilities. I feel like once a week I go on Twitter and I see a newly minted die-hard Ramatra hater, but I never see the solutions to try to fix him. Take your anger, take your rage, and funnel it into something productive. What do you think this is? Not everyone is a game designer. I mean, hell, I'm not. Yet. But I think that when we all put our heads together, we can find a solution. The Overwatch team does use YouTube, and they do go on Twitter, so they might see your idea and be inspired. Who knows? It just needs to be out there first for it to happen. I haven't made a video game yet because it's hard and it's time consuming, and I don't have a lot of leisure time because I have a soul-sucking job. But I love talking theory. When you proc discussion, it really isn't that hard, and it's easy to get a lot out of them. So go out there, go manifest your shitty ideas and put them out into the wild because you never know. You might just be the savior of Overwatch. Or the harbinger of death, but who's counting, am I right? Holy moly. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, do any of that stuff. But I want to grab your attention because this video is a trial run for my first second channel video. That's going to be Lane's Domain. It is on, drumroll please, Desert Island Video Games. And a little bit more than that. You'll have to watch to find out. That will be coming out hopefully soon now that I've got this setup going. If you want to catch me live, I'm not live very often, but twitch.tv/LaneHemingway or right here on this YouTube channel is where you're going to find me. If I'm live, I promise it'll be worth your time, probably filming for a video, but who knows. And as always, I do have a Discord. You can find that link down below. If you want to talk to me and my community a little more directly, we are going to do some giveaways in the future, as well as some community events going forward. If any of that interests you, it's all in the description of this video. Please go check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know I'm trying to get a little experimental here, but please let me know how you're liking it, if you're liking it. I do really appreciate it. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. That's all. Bye.
Oh no, I've been stranded on a desert island. And I don't know how.